For 15 years I gave up everything. My college fund, my career, my entire life, to care for my parents and keep our failing family home intact. My sister, Veronica, showed up once a year for Thanksgiving and Christmas, always pristine, always empty-handed. Last week, they signed the deed and the entire will over to her. They watched me place the power of attorney documents and the keys on the kitchen table, and my mother simply said, "She deserves it." But when Veronica finally opened the meticulous, terrifying document I left for her, the resulting scream echoed a truth they had all desperately avoided. "You're joking. The smell of mildew and old linoleum is the scent of my deferred life. It's what hits me every morning before the sun." Right after the beeping of Mom's specialized glucose monitor cuts through the heavy silence of the old Hayes house. For 15 years this house, this life has been my tomb and my monument, and the cold, damp air has settled deep into my bones. I am Alara, the permanent resident, the unpaid caretaker, the daughter who vanished inside the work, replaced by a ghost in worn-out jeans. When I was 18, the acceptance letter from the Rhode Island School of Design felt like a promise, a golden ticket out. My sketchbook was full of ambitious, impractical designs for sustainable skyscrapers. I was going to build structures that lasted, solid and true. That letter is still tucked away in a box in the laundry room closet, thin and yellowed, a brittle ghost of a future I never claimed. The summer before I was supposed to leave, Dad's heart problems accelerated, requiring constant medication adjustments, and Mom's type 2 diabetes spiraled into something requiring vigilant, around-the-clock management, including a feeding tube protocol for hypoglycemic episodes. Veronica, my flawless 2 years older sister, was already gone, making a name for herself in Seattle as a sharp, relentless director of marketing. She was the one they bragged about, the achievement. She sent flowers, sometimes a check for a generous, to her $100 and always a text signed off with, "Thinking of you, Alara. Keep strong." Her strength was built on distance and luxury. Mine was built on sheer, grinding attrition. I stayed. The college tuition fund was quickly liquidated. A clean $60,000 gone in less than 2 years for Dad's bypass surgery, and Mom's specialized medication costs that Medicare wouldn't fully cover. I didn't just manage the medical care. I became the house's physical manifestation of necessity. I learned YouTube tutorials for everything. How to bleed the rusty baseboard radiators, how to patch the leaky basement water heater, and how to reset the old breaker box that Dad insisted on calling fickle. Every dollar spent on a professional was a sacrifice to Mom's insulin supply or Dad's weekly physical therapy copays, which required a 40-mile round trip 3 times a week. I developed a deep, almost surgical understanding of the house's failing skeleton, the rotting fascia board on the west side that let the termites in, the dangerous aluminum wiring in the attic, the patch of perpetually damp ceiling in Mom and Dad's bedroom from the leaky roof that I'd patched with tar paper too many times to count. I was the unpaid, unthanked, utterly exhausted chief operating officer of the Hayes family's physical and medical existence, a life of endless, invisible maintenance. Veronica was the golden child, the star of the family narrative. Ronnie is running a whole division now. She's practically built her own empire. Mom would boast to the visiting nurses, never mentioning that Ronnie's empire was built on the stability provided by my sacrifice. Ronnie would fly in twice a year, sweeping through the house in designer coats that smelled of expensive city air and a hint of white wine, staying just long enough for the necessary photos and to critique my choice of takeout. "Why didn't you use the good china, Alara? It's Christmas." While sipping sparkling cider because she was doing a cleanse. She'd hug them tight, flash that dazzling, successful smile and vanish, leaving me behind with the smell of mildew and the relentless, non-negotiable rotation of medication schedules and bed changes. My 30th birthday passed. My 33rd birthday passed. I was tired, worn thin, and increasingly invisible. The only things that mattered to my parents were their comfort, their meds, and Veronica's updates. My existence was the predictable background noise of competence, a piece of furniture you don't notice until it's broken. Then came the call from Mr. Davies, the family lawyer. It was unusually formal, the kind of call that signaled finality. He requested all 4 of us, my parents, Veronica, and me, attend a meeting regarding the final disposition of their estate. Veronica, of course, had to fly in. The absurd, cruel contrast was blinding. She stepped off the plane looking like she'd just finished a magazine shoot, pristine and glowing, her nails freshly manicured. I had paint on my sweatpants and deep, bruised circles under my eyes from patching a large section of the garage roof against an unexpected rainstorm the night before. The lawyer's office was quiet, temperature-controlled, and smelled faintly of leather and money, a world I hadn't been allowed to enter. Dad sat heavily in his chair, his breathing shallow and rattling. Mom sat rigid, clutching her decorative, non-functional cane. Veronica sat beside them, her posture radiating success, polish, and barely disguised impatience to get back to her important city life. I sat opposite, feeling like a ghost at my own wake, my hands rough and callous from a decade of manual labor. Mr. Davies cleared his throat, his tone professionally sterile. He didn't look at me once. Helen and George, after careful consideration, have finalized the transfer of all remaining liquid assets, the life insurance policy, and the primary deed to the home to Veronica Hayes. This transfer is immediate and final. The words hit me like a physical blow. A clean, sharp crack of ice that traveled from my ears to my stomach. The air rushed out of my lungs, leaving a raw, aching cavity in my chest. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt a cold, clinical clarity take over, displacing the pain. 15 years. 15 years of cleaning their kitchen, managing their pain, fighting with their insurance providers, and driving them to every single appointment, including those where I had to physically lift Dad. And it all went to the one person who saw them as a photo opportunity and a convenient tax write-off. Elara. Mom's voice finally came, measured, utterly devoid of guilt, but filled with the smug self-satisfaction of having made a smart choice. She was looking at Veronica's shiny watch, not my face. We know you've been a good girl. You've been wonderful. But you're here. You'll always be here, honey. Veronica, she needs the financial security for her future. She has so much responsibility at her company, travel, meetings. We can't burden her with all this. I gave up my future for you, Mom. I heard myself say, the words flat and unemotional, stripped of the hysteria they might have expected. I gave up RISD. I gave up my career. I gave up the ability to save anything. I am the security you gave up. Dad coughed, a dry, nervous sound, avoiding my eyes and looking intently at his polished shoes. We need to ensure the house is taken care of, Elara. Ronnie has the resources to maintain it and hire professionals. You can stay for a bit, get settled, find a job nearby. We'll figure something out for you, maybe a small rental allowance in the carriage house, once Ronnie has time to renovate. Figure something out. That was the final devastating insult. They were offering me a few weeks of grace period in the house I had rebuilt with my own sweat and money, a house they had just gifted to my sister as a reward for her absence and supposed wealth. Veronica, sensing the drama was over and eager to celebrate her win, patted Mom's hand with a careful manicured touch. Don't worry, Elara. I'm thinking of setting up a trust eventually for the house maintenance. I can put some rental income aside for you after I sell it and consolidate the assets, maybe help you out with a security deposit on a better apartment. Patronizing, generous, and completely humiliating. She treated me like a poorly performing charity she'd just been obligated to donate to. I stood up. I didn't say another word in that office. My silence was the most powerful weapon I possessed. I nodded once, a gesture of cold, profound acceptance of their betrayal, and walked out. I drove home not to pack clothes but to assemble my masterpiece. The next 48 hours were the calmest and most focused I had known in a decade. I moved with the precise, methodical focus of an architect finishing a final critical blueprint. I was not abandoning the Hayes family. I was performing a controlled, strategic withdrawal of essential services. First, I pulled every single bank statement, every medical invoice, every canceled check from my personal accounts spanning 15 years. I meticulously cross-referenced them with the property files and the mortgage documents. I printed receipts for every dime spent on their specialized dietary needs, the new oxygen concentrator, and Dad's 3 separate emergency room visits last year. It created a stack nearly a foot high. Second, the house. I had spent nearly 5 years paying off the old mortgage myself using the minimal salary I earned doing remote data entry late at night. Then, 2 years ago, when Mom needed that specialized dialysis equipment and Dad had his last major operation, the insurance refused to cover the full costs. I was the only one who could act fast. I took out a substantial reverse equity mortgage HELOC on the house to afford those necessary $58,000 in immediate, life-saving expenses. I had handled the paperwork and secured the line of credit entirely in my name, as the parents' income and credit wouldn't support it. It was perfectly legal. I was the guarantor. The house was the collateral. The loan was used strictly for their medical care and critical home modifications, like the necessary stair lift. The house was now theirs, but the debt, however necessary and life-saving, was now tied to the property's equity. I created a full detailed amortization schedule showing the payment due dates for the next 2 quarters, highlighting the impending penalties. Third, the POA power of attorney transfer. This was the core of my plan. For the past decade, I held both the financial and health power of attorney. This meant I was legally and criminally responsible for their daily well-being. A 24/7 job that never ended. At the lawyer's office, they had signed the house over. Now they would sign the responsibility over too. I prepared the documents for the immediate legal revocation of my POA status and the transfer of those responsibilities directly to Veronica Hayes, the sole beneficiary of their entire estate. I had them sign the forms that very evening, telling them it was just some final paperwork to close out my involvement with the house finances before Ronnie takes over and can start collecting rent. They signed immediately, eager to get me out of the picture and solidify Veronica's claim to the supposed wealth. Finally, I compiled it all into a massive 3-inch thick document I labeled, with elegant simplicity, the Hayes Family Responsibilities Binder. It was a blue heavy tome of cause and effect, proof of the precise, undeniable cost of their care. I included a complete contact list for every doctor, pharmacy specialist and repairman, all of whom would now be calling Veronica. I added a final sealed envelope, written in my neatest architectural hand, labeled, "For Veronica only. Read first." At 6 a.m. on Monday, I finalized my lease agreement on a small, sunny apartment downtown, 2 hours away from the Hayes house. At 8 a.m., I set up the week's medications in their 7-day pill box, wrote out the care instructions for the new nurse I had hired for Monday only, to give me a clean 4 hours to escape, and placed the house keys, my revoked POA documents, and the heavy blue binder on the kitchen counter. I took one last, long look at the peeling paint of the wall I had always meant to fix, breathed in the smell of mildew for the last time and walked out. I started the engine of my battered sedan and drove toward my new life, leaving the mausoleum behind. I didn't hear anything for 2 days. I was settling into my tiny new space, the air conditioner working reliably, the walls clean. I logged into my first online architecture course, the screen bright and hopeful, a real future finally materializing. I was finally gloriously free, though a small sick part of me was waiting for the inevitable blast radius. Veronica arrived on Wednesday afternoon. She texted me a breezy photo of the counter, the blue binder sitting prominently next to her designer handbag. "Found your little gift, Alara. What's this massive binder for? Overkill much? Thanks for the keys, I'll take it from here. I'm going to start getting quotes on the sunroom extension." I didn't reply. I was waiting for her to open the envelope. She called 30 minutes later. I let it ring twice, then rejected the call, knowing she'd be too self-important to leave a voicemail she couldn't control. Then she called again. And again. And again. The calls became increasingly rapid. I could picture her standing in the kitchen, the scent of expensive perfume mixing violently with the pervasive mildew smell she would now have to tolerate, the glossy veneer of her inheritance starting to crack. Finally, she sent a text, the casualness gone, replaced by a raw, frantic tone. "Okay, Alara. Seriously, what is this nonsense about the HELOC? Call me now. The bank is asking about a missed payment last week. This is fraud." The reverse equity mortgage had found its first victim. I allowed myself a small, cold, satisfying smile I hadn't known my face could make. I knew the precise moment she opened the letter, because it was immediately followed by a barrage of frantic text messages, culminating in a violent, high-pitched voice message. I was on a video call with my course professor, discussing the principles of sustainable design and structural integrity, when my phone started vibrating relentlessly. I ended the video call, took a deep breath, and played the voice message, needing the confirmation of her devastation. It was a strangled sound of utter shock and terror, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps and broken sobs. I hit play in my head, hearing the content of my letter echoed in her panic. The letter read in her mind the final cruel reveal. Dear Veronica, congratulations on your inheritance. I'm writing this because I believe in meticulous documentation, something I've learned is essential when managing the lives of two severely unwell adults and a severely neglected piece of property. The house is yours free and clear, as of the deed transfer on Friday. However, there are a few items you may wish to address immediately. Please consult the responsibilities binder for complete details. Section A, the house, the financial burden. I spent the last $58,000 of available equity 2 years ago, money that should have been my retirement/future fund, to cover Mom's essential dialysis equipment and Dad's emergency surgery, as no one else was willing to contribute. This was secured via a HELOC against the property's equity, as their current income would not support new loans. I have attached the payment schedule, tab 1. The house is yours and so is the debt. Furthermore, the estimates for the roof repair, which is now leaking directly onto Mom's favorite armchair, and the necessary electrical overhaul are on tab 4. Total estimated immediate maintenance liability, $62,500. Your first property insurance payment is due Monday. I had to cancel the policy early to cover Dad's latest prescription copay. You are now uninsured, and the bank will be notified on Tuesday. Section B, the liquid assets. The liquid assets you inherited amount to $412, which is exactly the amount left after paying the emergency plumber for the burst pipe under the porch last week. The funds for their care were entirely depleted. Congratulations on the $412. Section C, the patients, the real inheritance. This is the most crucial section, and I apologize that you'll have to look at the paperwork yourself. As of 9 a.m. today, your parents have a new power of attorney, both health and financial, effective immediately upon my revocation, which they signed. You will find the countersigned, notarized documents in tab 8. This means you are now the legally responsible party for every single detail of their existence. You now own the burden of their survival. I have included a detailed, color-coded 168-hour care schedule, tab 9, for your convenience, detailing Mom's 7 daily medication times, the feeding tube protocol, Dad's weekly transportation needs for physical therapy, and the list of specific dietary restrictions. The first dose of Mom's evening insulin is due in exactly 3 hours. The nurse I hired for today only finishes her shift in 45 minutes, and I did not hire her for tomorrow. You are on the clock, Veronica. I trust that since you deserve the inheritance, you also deserve the responsibility that comes with it. Don't forget to call Dr. Thompson about Dad's new blood thinner dosage before 5 p.m., or he won't get his refill. The pharmacy only accepts the current POA for authorization. Best of luck, Veronica. Alara Hayes. The voice message was harsh, a prolonged high-pitched scream cutting through her panic, laced with fury and disbelief. I picked up the phone just as it was winding down. Alara, you sick bitch. Veronica's voice was hysterical, entirely unlike the polished professional she usually was. She was panting, choking on her own tears. The PO. You revoked it? You just transferred it? They signed it over to me? And the house is in debt. The roof. This is a liability. You're joking. You have to come back. Mom is crying, and I don't know where the glucometer strips are. Dad is asking for his pills and I can't find them. I finally spoke, my voice soft, calm, and utterly final, the sound of a closing door. No, Ronnie. I'm not joking. Congratulations. You got the house, the money, and the life. You got everything they had left to give, including the most expensive part, the daily care. And I finally got mine back. That's called a fair exchange, isn't it? She was still sputtering, something about lawyers and contesting the signatures, threatening to sue me for elder abandonment, but I cut her off, my tone unwavering. Check the dates, Veronica. All the paperwork is perfectly legal and notarized. You accepted the asset and the liability comes with it. You have exactly 15 minutes before Mom needs her next injection, and you don't even know where I store the syringes. Look in the freezer door, by the way. The care schedule is clear. Figure it out. This is your empire now. I hung up. I didn't save the message. I blocked her number, then blocked my parents' landline and their cell phones for good measure. I stood up and walked to the window of my new small apartment. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the clean, unused floorboards. My first architecture class assignment was about designing structures that could withstand immense pressure. I realized that for 15 years I was the structure, and they had overloaded me until I strategically withdrew my foundation, allowing the true life-shattering weight of the situation to shift completely to the undeserving beneficiary. I was finally free, sitting in a room that smelled only of fresh paint and new beginnings. Veronica got the gold medal she always wanted, the house, and the crushing weight of the life I had saved them from. She deserved it, and I deserved the right to start building my own life from the ground up, with a clean slate, a strong cup of coffee, and no one needing my name on a power of attorney ever again. My future was just beginning.